All right, so you've given me this huge stack of articles and notes all about the future of cryptocurrency. And wow, I have to say I've seen some really, really fascinating themes in here. Like adoption regulation, new tech, even market predictions. It seems like you're really interested in, like where this whole crypto thing is headed. And well, you know what? We've got an expert here who can help us like break it all down, make sense of it all. So I don't know if you saw this in the articles you sent, but did you know that like some countries are actually starting to adopt Bitcoin as like legal tender?
Right?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Right.
And then the tech side of things is just booming like crazy. There are all these new innovations that could make crypto like way faster and cheaper than ever before. So yeah, this is going to be a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this whole space is how quickly it's all changing. We're seeing this whole cryptocurrency ecosystem kind of exploding. It's not just Bitcoin anymore.
Right.
It's a little bit like the early days of the internet, if you think about it. Just this burst of innovation and, of course, a little bit of uncertainty too.
Yeah, you've definitely got articles about Bitcoin in here, but I'm noticing a lot more about this ecosystem that you mentioned. Like what's going on there?
Well, we're seeing, thousands of different cryptocurrencies popping up now. And they all have their own unique features and purposes. Some are all about privacy, some are focused on speed, and some are even designed to be more environmentally friendly. And I think this diversification is really what makes the future so hard to predict, but also incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and speaking of exciting, your sources talk a lot about like mainstream adoption. You even flag those articles about like Tesla and PayPal and how they're making moves with Bitcoin. It feels like things are really shifting.
Oh, they absolutely are. I mean, when Tesla announced they were accepting Bitcoin as payment, it was a huge deal. It brought crypto into conversations that it just wasn't in before. And then PayPal jumped in and started allowing users to buy, sell, hold crypto. That made it way more accessible to the average person. These weren't just symbolic thing. These were major companies betting on the future of crypto.
Yeah, so we're seeing these huge companies get involved. And then you even mentioned like countries like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin as legal tender.
Right.
Like, is this a trend? Could this be the norm in 10 years?
It's really hard to say for sure, but I think it definitely shows that crypto is becoming more mainstream. And, widespread adoption like that could have a massive impact on traditional financial systems. Just imagine a world where we're using decentralized currencies for everyday transactions. That's a pretty radical shift, which of course brings us to regulation. I saw you flagged a ton of articles about that.
Right. It seems like a lot of your sources are really interested in how governments are going to deal with this whole crypto thing. Is there any clarity there?
Well, it's a little bit of a wild west out there at the moment. Governments are still trying to figure out how to regulate crypto, and there's no real consensus yet. We could see a global standardized approach,
Right.
which would definitely be simpler, but it's just as likely that we'll end up with this patchwork of different regulations across different countries. And that could get really complicated.
Yeah, talk about uncertainty. Okay, well, let's move on from the rule books for a minute and talk about the technology itself. You highlighted some articles about like blockchain evolution, and I'm really curious to know more about like what's happening on that front.
Ah, yes, the engine behind it all. The blockchain technology is constantly evolving, and one of the biggest things people are working on is scalability. It's all about making transactions faster and cheaper. Imagine trying to buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin and having to wait an hour for the transaction to go through.
Right. Not very practical.
Not at all. So that's where these layer 2 solutions are coming in. Think of it like building an express lane on top of the existing blockchain highway. A great example of this is the Lightning Network. It allows for almost instantaneous transactions with really low fees, which makes crypto so much more practical for daily use.
Okay, so faster transactions, lower fees, that definitely sounds promising. But you've also got a lot of articles in here about DeFi, decentralized finance. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit fuzzy on what that actually means.
So DeFi is pretty revolutionary. It's basically using smart contracts. These are self-executing agreements written in code on blockchains like Ethereum. And it's about using these smart contracts to create financial services that completely bypass the traditional middlemen like banks.
Okay.
So imagine being able to get a loan directly from another person with all the terms and conditions of the loan automatically enforced by a smart contract, no bank needed.
Wow. That's a really interesting concept. And your sources say that DeFi could even become more user-friendly and maybe even integrate with traditional finance at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. There's huge potential there. It's still early days, but we're already seeing DeFi platforms offering things like lending, borrowing, insurance, asset management, all without the need for a traditional bank.
So let's look into the crystal ball a bit. Your sources mentioned some market predictions, and I know it's impossible to predict the future, especially with something as volatile as crypto, but I'm still curious what the experts are saying.
Well, a lot of analysts are predicting pretty significant growth in the crypto market, and that's driven by things like institutional investment. We're seeing hedge funds, pension funds, even starting to put money into crypto, which definitely adds a level of legitimacy and could really push prices up. But it's super important to remember that the market is volatile. Prices can change really quickly, and there's always the risk of scams and, bad actors.
Right, which is a good reminder to do your research and invest responsibly. Don't just jump on the hype train without understanding what you're getting into. Okay, so moving on from Bitcoin and the more established cryptocurrencies, you've also got articles about these newer types of crypto like privacy coins and eco-friendly cryptocurrencies. Tell me more about those.
Those are really interesting developments. So, privacy coins are designed to enhance anonymity in transactions, which basically means it's much harder to track the flow of funds. Obviously, that's appealing to people who are concerned about privacy,
Right.
but it also raises concerns about potential misuse for, illegal activities.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that could be a double-edged sword. What about the eco-friendly cryptos? I'm guessing they're trying to address the environmental concerns around mining.
Exactly. The amount of energy used by traditional proof of work mining, which is what Bitcoin uses, has been a major criticism, but we're seeing a shift towards more sustainable methods like proof of stake. So instead of miners using tons of energy to solve complex math problems to create new blocks, with proof of stake, validators are chosen to create new blocks based on how much cryptocurrency they already hold. It's way more energy efficient.
So it sounds like there's hope for a greener crypto future. But even with all this amazing innovation, it feels like there are still some big challenges and risks. You've got a lot of sources about security concerns like hacks and scams.
Security is absolutely crucial. The decentralized nature of crypto, which is one of its biggest strengths, all that makes it attractive to criminals. Hackers are always looking for ways to exploit weaknesses in exchanges and wallets, and scams are everywhere. It's so important to be careful, do your research, use reputable exchanges, and be wary of anything that sounds too good to be true.
It sounds like it could be a bit of a jungle out there. But even with all the risks and uncertainty, it seems like the potential benefits are just too big to ignore. What do you think is the biggest hurdle crypto needs to overcome in the future?
I'd have to say it's public perception. There's still a lot of fear and skepticism around crypto, and a lot of that comes from a lack of understanding. We need to change the narrative, and I think education is key. The more people understand the technology, the potential, and the risks, the better decisions they can make.
I completely agree. Well, this has been a pretty incredible deep dive. We've covered so much, everything from adoption and regulation to blockchain innovation and the challenges ahead. The future of crypto is full of potential, that's for sure. But there's also a lot of uncertainty. I'm walking away from this with more questions than answers, honestly. But I think that's a good thing. It means there's so much more to learn and explore. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. Just imagine a world where decentralized finance is the norm. How would that change your daily life? How would it affect the global economy? It's pretty mind-boggling when you really think about it. And hey, don't forget, this whole deep dive was created just for you based on all those articles and notes you gave me. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep on diving deep.